Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Get this, we're tackling a title with a double life today. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy.
Double life, that's one way to put it.
Okay, so hear that title. What comes to mind? I'm thinking classic Cold War thriller, right?
Right, yeah.
Shadowy meetings, trench coats, that slow burn of suspicion.
Yeah.
You know the vibes.
You nailed it.
But get this, there's a modern sci-fi thriller, and it's got the same name.
Now that's where things get interesting.
Talk about a head-scratcher, right?
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
So, same title, but we're not talking about some alternate history Earth situation here. This one's set in a full-on galactic empire.
Full blown, yeah. They've even got a fancy name for their government, the Ghost Federation.
Spaceships, the whole nine yards.
Oh, absolutely. Advanced tech, the works. But at its core, still a story about betrayal, about uncovering the truth.
Okay, so two books, same title, worlds apart in, well, the setting. You'd think apples and oranges, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's where this deep dive gets good. Because we're going to see how both these books, totally different vibes and all, they still wrestle with some seriously meaty themes. And that's what we're here for, right?
Right, get to the bottom of it.
Exactly. So where do we even start?
Well, both of these stories, they kind of throw us right into the deep end with the protagonist facing our worst nightmare. You've got Tinker, Tailor, the original, right? And we meet George Smiley, career intelligence officer, his task, uncover a Soviet mole. No pressure or anything.
Talk about a job description, right? I can't imagine having a job where you're constantly, second-guessing everyone around you.
That's Smiley's life in a nutshell. And his whole investigation, it's like this slow burn. Every single clue, it's a tiny piece of this giant, complicated puzzle. Right. And the stakes. We're talking national security, fate of the free world. It's high stakes, right?
High stakes is an understatement.
And then you've got Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Serpent, the sci-fi version. Our protagonist this time, Rex Dodgers. And let me tell you, his story starts with a bang. We're talking framed for murder.
Whoa. Talk about hitting the ground running. Sounds like his version of Tinker Tailor is a little less about methodical investigation, a little more about, survival.
You got it.
Yeah.
And just like Smiley, he's got to find a traitor. But this time, it's the entire Ghost Federation that's at stake. Makes you wonder why even use the same title, right? I mean, the stories are pretty different when you get down to it.
And that is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
But even with those different flavors, both stories, they're all about this idea of the serpent hiding in plain sight.
Always someone lurking in the shadows.
Right, exactly. So in classic Tinker Tailor, you've got your mole buried deep within British intelligence, just quietly chipping away from the inside.
But in the sci-fi version, the antagonist, their reach is way bigger. We're not just talking about one organization here. This is someone, they've got the power to destabilize like a whole galactic empire, a completely different scale of threat.
So two protagonists, both of them hunting for a serpent, but the stakes,
Yeah.
the methods, it's like they're playing the same game, right? But with totally different rule book.
Totally different rule book and playing on a much, much larger board, at least in Rex's case.
It's like the original Tinker Tailor, it's like a pressure cooker, right?
Yeah.
Intense, contained. But the sci-fi version, it's like it explodes outward.
Mm.
And it's kind of wild how it mirrors how much our world has changed,
And that difference in scale, it's not just about showing off what sci-fi can do, right? I mean, it says something about us, about our anxieties, how we've gone from Cold War paranoia, enemies within, to this whole other level of vastness threats in this sprawling galaxy.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is.
So we've got the classic, very internal, very claustrophobic. Then we've got the sci-fi, this vast, expansive thing.
Uh-huh.
But there's this common thread, isn't there? Something that just hooks you in no matter the setting.
Absolutely, and it's a big one. It makes both stories what they are.
And that lack of trust isn't just some abstract idea, right? It's woven into every corner of these stories.
You could say it's practically a character in itself.
Right.
Take Smiley's world, for instance. Here he is, surrounded by colleagues he's known for years, people he's risked his life with, and yet he's always got that nagging doubt. Can he really trust them, or are they playing their own games?
It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of quicksand.
Exactly. And it's not just the institutions that are riddled with mistrust. It's in the very air they breathe. The Cold War setting, with its constant threat of double agents and ideological clashes, creates this pervasive atmosphere of paranoia.
Which makes his job of finding one specific serpent feel like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach.
It really does. But then you've got Rex Dodgers and the sci-fi Tinker Tailor talk about a character wrestling with trust issues.
Oh, tell me about it. framed for murder.
He's got to clear his name while navigating a web of galactic conspiracies.
It's not easy.
And just when you think he's completely alone, this mysterious woman enters the picture.
Okay, now that's a classic spy thriller trope if I ever heard one. Is she a femme fatale, a double agent, a guardian angel?
Right. She could be his saving grace or his downfall, and Rex, he's got to figure that out on the fly, with the fate of the Ghost Federation hanging in the balance.
See, this is why I love this comparison. Both Smiley and Rex are dealing with betrayals and hidden agendas, but the way they navigate that uncertainty, the choices they make, it highlights the different pressures and anxieties of their worlds.
Absolutely. Smiley's world is all about secrets whispered in smoky back rooms, about decoding cryptic messages and piecing together fragments of truth. It's cerebral. It's about strategy and anticipating your opponent's next move.
While Rex is more about high-stakes chases across the galaxy, confronting enemies face-to-face, making split-second decisions with limited information.
And yet both are ultimately driven by the same desire to uncover the truth. They have to see through the deceptions, the smoke and mirrors, and figure out who's really pulling the strings. And that's what makes these stories so compelling. It's that relentless pursuit of truth in a world determined to keep it hidden.
It's like that old saying, everybody lies. But in these books, those lies can have galaxy-sized consequences. And it makes you wonder, what does it say about us as readers that we're so drawn to stories about betrayal and deception?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? These stories hold up a mirror to our own anxieties, to the very human fear that the people we trust, the systems we rely on, might not be what they seem. And perhaps by exploring those fears in fictional worlds, we gain a little more insight into our own.
It's like holding your breath while diving into the deep end of a pool. You know you need to come up for air, but the world down there is just too fascinating to resist.
And sometimes you even discover something unexpected down there. These stories, despite their focus on deception, also remind us of the power of truth.
Because in a world built on lies, finding even a sliver of truth can feel like a victory.
Exactly. It might not be easy and it might come at a cost, but both Smiley and Rex show us that some truths are worth fighting for.
And that's what makes these stories so much more than just spy thrillers.
They're explorations of human nature, of the choices we make when faced with uncertainty and betrayal.
It's like both authors are saying, look, the world can be a messy, complicated place.
But even in the darkest corners, there's always a glimmer of hope, a reason to keep searching for the truth.
And isn't it interesting how both Tinker-Tailor stories, even with their wildly different settings, manage to capture that same sense of moral complexity?
What strikes me is how the authors use their chosen settings to amplify those themes. In the classic Tinker-Tailor, the Cold War backdrop with its constant tension and suspicion becomes a character itself.
It's like the walls are always closing in, both literally and metaphorically.
Exactly. Every conversation feels heavy with unspoken meanings, every alliance laced with doubt. And that sense of claustrophobia, of being trapped in a web of secrets, it mirrors Smiley's internal struggle as he tries to untangle the truth.
Whereas in the sci-fi Tinker-Tailor, the vastness of space becomes a canvas for a different kind of intrigue. It's almost like the scale of the setting reflects the expansive nature of the conspiracy Rex is trying to unravel.
And let's not forget the technology. In Rex's world, advanced tech isn't just about cool gadgets and faster spaceships. It adds another layer of paranoia, because how can you be sure who's really in control, who's pulling the strings from behind the scenes?
It makes you think about how technology, for all its wonders, can also be used to manipulate and deceive.
Absolutely. And that's something both stories grapple with, each in their own way. They remind us that no matter how advanced we become, the human heart, with its capacity for both good and evil, remains the greatest mystery of all.
So what does it all mean? What can we take away from diving into these two very different takes on Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy?
For me, it's a reminder that the best stories, regardless of genre, are the ones that stay with you long after you've finished reading them. They spark conversations, challenge your assumptions, and make you see the world in a new light.
And these two Tinker-Tailor stories definitely fit the bill. They're thrilling reads on their own, but by comparing them, by seeing how they echo and diverge, we gain a deeper understanding of the themes they explore.
It's like having two different lenses through which to view the same complex ideas of trust, betrayal, and the pursuit of truth.
It's been quite a journey exploring these two worlds, don't you think? We've gone from the smoky backrooms of Cold War espionage to the far reaches of a galactic empire, And yet we found ourselves face to face with the same fundamental questions about human nature.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive. It's not just about the information we uncover, but the connections we make and the new perspectives we gain.
So to our listeners, we hope this has sparked your curiosity. If you've already explored one of these Tinker-Tailor stories, I highly recommend giving the other a try. You might be surprised by what you discover.
And if you're new to both, well, you're in for a treat. Just remember, trust no one and keep your eyes peeled for those serpents in disguise.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, happy reading.